Tags are an incredible way to customize your experience and to improve the way that the search works. But if you're just starting out, it can be easy to get into a bit of a muddle by either overdoing it on tags or not using them in the right way. So there are some best practice guidelines to follow, and that's what I'm going to cover here. Before I do that though, let's just have a think about when tags might be used. So tags are a great way to additionally categorize a job. So for example, if there are some jobs that are urgent and some jobs that are not urgent, a tag would be a great way to indicate the ones that were, and that's going to help me to prioritize the jobs I'm working on. This is an excellent use case for a tag. On the other hand, if it is something like a completable step that's required for the job, it's more likely you're going to need an extra pipeline stage. If it's something that happens every single time, generally speaking, I'd say add an extra stage, especially if there's that completable element to it. So now that you've had to think about what tags might be used for, have a little look at this list of tags that I've created. So we've got one for commercial, we've got one for management survey, different offices that we have. You can see if I scroll down, we have a residential tag and an urgent tag. So these are great uses of tags. By adding tags, I can find these jobs by simply searching for that bit of key information, and they're going to show on the jobs list. Another advantage is that I can also export jobs with that specific tag, or even multiple tags. So I could say export all the commercial jobs, for example. Okay, so now let's get into the best practices. First of all, I'm just going to say it's probably best not to overuse tags. You want to use them for those key bits of information. If you're creating hundreds of tags, you're probably doing something wrong. Next, let's just think about the names of tags. So when naming tags, you want to keep them fairly short in length. The ones you see on this page are probably about the maximum character length that you want to be aiming for. You can see I have some slightly longer ones here, like reinspection 12 months, but they are short enough that you're going to be able to easily see them on the jobs list. I would say you want to be aiming for about 1 to 3 words maximum. Now, if there are related tags, another good naming convention is to prefix the tag with the kind of common element. So you can see here we have various offices. I've used this office : prefix. I've just kept that at the start so we can easily see that these are related. This is also going to help when the tags are ordered because they're going to be ordered alphabetically. So it keeps all of those tags together. You can see another time when I've used this is here. I've got this requires ladders and requires PPE, but they both have the requires prefix, so I know it's a requirement of the job. But by adding that prefix, it's also kept them together and I can see that they are related. Okay, now that we've covered the name, let's talk about the description. I would say it's helpful to add a description for every tag. The reason being is that they will show in the tooltip when you are in places like the jobs list. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to head back up to the jobs list, and you can see we have this Office Newcastle tag. If I hover over it, I get this extra tooltip, and it's telling us that this job needs to be assigned to the Newcastle office staff. Now, this tag isn't really that complex, so it's adding something, but not too much. There may be cases though when the tag might not be obvious to whoever's reading, in which case adding the description is an essential bit of information. You're also going to see the description when you're adding the job, like so. You can see the tag name is on the left and the description is on the right. So this is helpful just to contextualize the tag and understand exactly what it's meant to be used for. Okay, let's head back over to the tags list. Now we've talked about the job name and the job description. Let's talk about the job colour. An easy trap to fall into is to use lots and lots of colours, and it becomes quite overwhelming when you're looking at the jobs list. I like to keep the colours relatively muted. So these white tags here are not too in your face, they're quite easy to read and they're not going to distract you too much. If you are going to use colours, it's also a good idea to group the colours depending on the different tags and whether they're related. So these office tags are all that same white colour, and you can see we've done the same with this requires tag. These two are related, therefore we've made them the same colour. That's easy when you're adding or editing the tag. You can put in either a hex code like we've done here, or you can actually just use the color picker to select the relative color you want. If you're going to do that, make sure you copy the hex code to the next one that is related, so you're getting the exact same color. It's not similar, it is exactly the same. Now, on the subject of colors, you also want to be considering the color contrast. When you select a color from the color picker like so, you can see this little icon will change and it's telling you what the color contrast is like. The color contrast is the difference between the foreground color, the text, and the background color. So as you are moving around, this little icon is going to warn you if there's a bad contrast. So for example, with this one, we've got white text on a light red background. Therefore, it's a little bit harder to read, and it will tell us that if we hover over this little icon. Now, this is important for accessibility. You might be able to read it okay, but there could be other members of your team who would struggle to read it. So generally speaking, I would try and keep a good or okay contrast. This one clearly is no good, but if we were to sort of move over to the left here, this one's okay, and this one is easy to read. So try and aim for easy to read if you can, but okay is often fine too. Another thing just to mention with descriptions is I would say don't scrimp on the description. Make it as descriptive as possible. So for example, if I was to add a description to this reinspection 12 months tag, I might say something like, this job requires reinspection in 12 months time. Please get in touch with the client before then to arrange a reinspection. That's going to really explain exactly what this tag is used for. Okay, so I'd just like to give some final tips and best practices on tags. You want to be using tag names that are reusable. So a tag like urgent is going to be reusable because you're going to have lots of cases when there are urgent jobs and you're going to want to categorize a job in that way. Try to stay away from single-use tags unless there's a really good reason for it. So if you have single-use tags that might apply in 1 or 2 cases, you're going to end up with a lot of tags. It's going to be hard to navigate and hard to make sense of. It probably also won't give you that much value. So the types of tags we've got here, like commercial, residential, and so on, you can understand they would be reused a lot of times, and therefore they provide value. And lastly, I just want to mention things that shouldn't be a tag. So the kinds of things that probably shouldn't be a tag are things you can already access from the jobs list. If I go into here, you can see we have information such as the client, the project, the site address, and so on. So we already have that information on a job. It would be silly to add a tag for a client because you can already search for the client here. If I was to type Acme, you can see I can find them very easily. And although that search has used typo tolerance and it's brought back a few other things, we could actually put speech marks around it like so to do an exact match for that client. So you can already search by things like client and project, site address, and so on. You don't want to be adding tags for those things. The same goes for the year, and this is something I see people do quite a lot, is they might add a tag for 2025, 2026, and so on. However, you might not know this, but you can actually search for the year here. So I could say 2025, and you can see it's going to search for all jobs that were due in 2025. So again, adding a tag for the year might be a little bit redundant because you can search for it in this way. So just to recap, these best practices for tags will make sure you don't get in a bit of a muddle. You want to make sure you're not overusing your colors. You're grouping related tags by color, using prefixes to illustrate which tags are related. You want to also keep tags to a relative minimum and use reusable tags rather than single-use tags. Also, don't use tags for something you can already search for in the dashboard because you're kind of duplicating the effort. If you follow these tips, the search is going to be incredibly powerful and you're going to be able to find exactly what you're looking for.